Yay! Hello, everybody. Just in case, I think we all, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces here, so I don't know if we need to run around and do an introduction tonight, unless anybody really wants to. If anybody really wants to, raise your hand and we'll introduce you. Otherwise, I'm just going to introduce myself because I've been pretty noisy lately and you might not know who I am. So just in case you haven't met me either in person or on one of these things, I'm Shelly. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I'm a mBIT Master Coach and an mBIT Next Level Coach. And I'm pretty thrilled to be able to bring this thing to you tonight, joined by my colleague and friend, Emilie. Would you like to introduce yourself now, Emilie?
Yes, I would love to introduce myself. Thank you, Shelly. So I'm currently, I'm just visiting my family here in Geneva. I'm normally based in Sweden, in Stockholm. I'm also a master mBIT coach and an mBIT trainer and mBIT Next Level coach as well. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be here tonight, this morning, this afternoon, wherever everybody is. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about congruence and NIEs. Do we call them NIEs or NIEs or neurointegrative something?
NIEs, who knows?
I'm not sure really. But we Emilie and I kind of discussed this and we wanted this to be more of a conversation than a presentation. So as such, we've prepared more questions for you than answers. So to kick it right off, I suppose, what is congruence? Anybody?
I'll be brave or silly, one or the other.
Go on, be brave. We're all friends here.
Well, so for me, congruence, and this is actually the title of this session tonight, was why I particularly wanted to jump on. I'm in my hockey clothes. I've actually got a hockey game after this, but I thought I really want to learn about this a bit more. For me, and what I remember in my training, and I have used mBIT in small amounts with clients, I recall the congruence is being in that state of calm, alert awareness type of state. Like I remember the cat metaphor, like you're a cat ready to pounce but totally relaxed. And for me, that congruence is, being right in the middle of both zones. Is that even close?
So it's like, yes, and we know that congruence is sort of, if we remember the picture of our roadmap, right? Congruence is sort of the step that comes after communication. So with that in mind, what are we aiming for in the congruence phase?
Yeah, is that all three are in agreement, in agreeance?
Sure. Yes. So it's kind of, yes, all three brains are in agreement. Now, being that we're coaching a client in this imaginary scenario where we've got our roadmap, and I'm doing that because that's the picture that I've got in my head of the roadmap. Obviously, our client has come to us because they're missing something. And what they're probably missing, just taking a wild guess, they're probably missing congruence. So being that they're missing congruence, why is it so important that we pay a lot of attention to this particular part of the roadmap?
Because we can't bring out the highest expression, being the creative courage, compassionate courage, if they're not all in agreement.
Perfect. Absolutely correct. So I'm going to pick on you, Colette, because you've got a voice,
okay,
and I can hear you.
And I'm in my onesie.
Perfect. So you've got a client. Let's just imagine that you've got a client and they've come to you and they've got an issue. What are you looking for? Like, how can you tell whether they're congruent or not?
So I'm listening and watching their, where are they speaking from? What metaphors are they perhaps using? Which brain perhaps is taking over from the others, which is going to sort of be my easiest entry point, and or which brain is the one that is not being heard. So is the one that we need to sort of allow his or her voice to come out.
Beautiful. So, and this is kind of just an open, throw it out to anybody and everybody kind of question. How do you get a client from incongruence to congruence?
We allow all three brains to say what they need to say to see what blocks may or may not be there, or what is it, clearly if they had already achieved the desired outcome, they wouldn't be sitting there in front of us. So for them to work out what's stopping them, so that we can then, whether we need to bring that out, whether we need to, make it safe, whether it just allowing all three brains to be heard and do their role so that they can meet their highest expression.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. And let's imagine that all three of the brains have had their say and they're arguing. Now what?
Tell them to stop it.
Stop it.
Or remove their head, I think someone did in the past.
Oh, I love that. Oh.
Okay, so what was the question? So what do we do if they're all arguing?
Yes.
Well, I guess, again, it's about getting them to communicate what do they need with whatever the issue is that they've come, in alignment with that. What is it that they need to be in agreement?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how are you going to do that?
Well, ensure that they remain in their balanced breathing and just gently speaking to each of them, mm-hmm. or going in and finding where the blocks are and allowing the client to sort of work out why they're there and why they're all fighting, and if they don't just stop, then what else they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. And what kind of methods are we going to use to get from that incongruent state to the congruent state?
You're going to use every method in your toolkit.
Every
single one.
Everything you know in the mBIT suite of techniques. You're going to keep them coherent. You're going to get them at a high heart rate variability. You might use a pattern interrupt. I mean, everything that is at every resource we have that we've learned in the training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And anybody else?
We can use an interrupt pattern. If there are things that are coming up and blocks there, we can actually use the interrupt pattern to break those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would ask them, what does it look like, and what event reminds you, or to get the head, the heart and the gut talking about an event that's blocking them, and just bring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then get the congruence. What does the head need, the heart and the gut, to bring them into congruence?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what if talking doesn't work?
I would shake it, get them to shake themselves. Yes. Just shake it all off, and then just get them to feel comfortable in what they want to do, and then just do that balanced breathing, belly breathing, and maybe start again and ask, questions. What would your problem look like, and how would you like to solve it? How is it a problem?
Nice.
Hmm.
Nice.
I guess if they remain arguing, Shelley, that, you know, perhaps the client is not in the right place, their ANS is not balanced. But if they're either or, if they're sympathetic or parasympathetic, as, you know, I remember Suzanne saying she went and did 2 hours of balanced breathing with a client and still sort of couldn't get them into that coherence. So, you know, it may not, if they were all arguing, it you know, maybe just practicing that breathing until you could bring them into a balanced state.
Do you think that it's possible for someone to be in a balanced, coherent state and for their brains to still be incongruent?
Possibly.
My experience is it's very rare. In the coaching sessions I've done, it's very rare. But I had a situation yesterday where that was the case. I think it's rare, but
There's some noise going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know we were going to be in the venue, so I spoke to.
oh well, it's gone.
Sorry, I've muted her. She's usually at work. It's Tatiana, so I think she probably just didn't realise she was unmuted. I haven't just muted you all. Somebody speak.
Oh.
You've all gone very quiet and I'm waiting for someone to say something. Have I just turned you all off?
We should have all stayed quiet.
Did you see me breathing then? Breathe, calm, breathe.
Pranksters everywhere. Emilie, do you have anything to add?
I do. I feel like I'm cheating a little bit because I've obviously done the research with you last week, over the last few days, but we mentioned the NIEs, I can't even say it now, integrative engagements, and I guess they act like amplifiers, don't they, to get the flow going between the brains. And what you said before there with what if words don't work, we can also work with metaphors, and, you know, metaphors with colors and play with the kind of there's a really beautiful example in the book of I believe her name is Kyla T on page 170 in the book, where she wasn't able to bring what was going on in her heart up to her head. So they kind of allowed her to put color to the breathing and the emotion. And then it was super easy for her to share that with the head brain. So that is one way of doing that. So to play around with the colors of metaphors and I guess submodalities as well. Yeah.
Dima's put a lovely comment in the chat box as well. So her first comment was negotiate, which is just great, right? Treating them all like young kids and negotiating with them. And then watch out for secondary gain, for keeping the problem and refusing to arrive at congruence. Which is a great comment. What is there to gain by not going into congruence? What are they hanging on to?
So what do you see and hear and feel and notice in your clients apart from what they're saying when they're not congruent? Because we all know that sometimes the head can jump in and start telling stories for the heart and the gut. So how can you tell, using whatever else you've got in your toolkit, when a client is not congruent, but maybe they are pretending to be?
Sensory acuity.
Yeah.
When somebody says yes and they're going, I mean, this is exaggerated,
Yep.
But, you know, or somebody's like, yeah, I'm really keen. And then they suddenly go back and they're like, what was that about?
Right.
So paying attention to body gestures, for instance, is one way of spotting the potential blind spot in congruence.
Yep. Anybody else?
Yeah, listening to the language, obviously. So if we hear like heart brain suddenly start to think actively, we know that something is going on here.
Yeah.
I think I feel great.
Yeah.
And plus what Emilie said, then yeah, I know,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all this like kind of we can see the disbalance between what they say, what words they use, and nonverbal behavior as well.
Nice. Nice.
I see it a lot like in hesitation. So they'll be like, you know, are you talking about something or other? And I'll just be like, yep, keen for that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, are you sure?
Yeah, so you know, and things like that are always worth checking out, aren't they? When your client says something but you get a feeling or a sense that they're not telling you the full story. And that's, I guess, where what Emilie was saying before, when you pull out another trick out of your book of magic and go, okay, well, how about we try a metaphor? How about we try, you know, doing some shaking like someone mentioned before, to see if we can get everything sort of on board, because your client most of the time doesn't realize what they're doing or what they're feeling or what they're saying. We've got to use our exquisite coaching skills to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. That's what we do. That's what we're here for.
There's also something that I want to add in regard, and I know we were going to touch on it, but I feel like the timing is right now. Entrainment. So when you can sense that your client is stuck or doing the problem in front of you, is to also check, how am I congruent? Am I breathing? Am I in my head? Or, you know, so because it's all about entrainment and the mirroring, I suppose. So that's really important too, and that can happen in a split second, to go, okay, how am I congruent right now as well, because you're guiding the client obviously through a process.
And that's, I suppose, where although we are giving all of our attention and our energy to our client in a session, we've also got to be aware of ourselves. So if you go into, I mean, we all know this, but it bears repeating, I suppose. If you go into a coaching session and you're all over the shop, you're going to have a bigger chance of entraining all over the shop into your client.
Yeah.
All over the shop is usually up here somewhere. Yes. That's my shop. So how do you know, as the coach, when you're not on track, when you're not congruent, and when you're kind of feeding that into your client? What do you feel in yourself or sense in yourself?
Uncertainty. I know with me, with a client, I was in my head that morning. I hadn't prepared like I normally would, and I was looking at the client. I brought it to one of our global chats, and but it was actually clearly I was in my head as well. So look, I went out of mBIT and went into timeline, which was perfect for her, but I think it was also because I was in my head. So I think it can show through with the client and how perhaps they're reacting, breathing, or responding.
Nice. And you know what? That's also a really good point, Colette. We have more than mBIT in our in our toolbox. So, you know, if you come to a point where, you know, and even if you are in your head, if your head says, you know, this client could do with a little bit of a timeline therapy right now, then go into that.
Absolutely. I pull out all the tools.
Good one. Good one.
Shelly, dare I flash that up? Did you refer to that in your prep?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. We used the facilitator's guide as well, which is the other book. Yeah.
There's a beautiful list in there of different signals you're looking for, which obviously as much in yourself for your own congruence as in your clients.
So yeah, it's
Suzanne,
chapter 8, I believe, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Suzanne, what book is that one? It's not
That's
the facility.
the coaching workbook.
Okay.
If I hold it back far enough, you can see the whole book.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I ordered the wrong one. Awesome. I'm onto that one.
So there's the coaching workbook and the facilitator's guide. They kind of go as a pair.
Oh, okay. Well, I got the other one. So, yeah, I'll get that one.
Yeah, same. So the facilitator's guide will have the same stuff in it, but it also gives you what you're looking for as the coach, whereas your client would have the coaching workbook.
Ah, okay. So I will get a copy of that. The facilitator's one's perfect for me, but the coaching one's good for the client. Yes?
Yeah, oh, it's brilliant. It's almost like a coaching package in its own right. You just give them the book and you can just work.
Why have I not even known about this? I'm onto that.
I don't know. Who on earth trained you, Colette? Sack them immediately.
She was amazing. I just must not have been listening.
Nice recovery.
I'm taking ownership.
You can't blame yourself because I have both of them and I was the same trainer.
Thank you, Rochelle.
When Shelly and I were preparing for this call, we Shelly, I remember you mentioning something on page in the main book on page 186 when you brought to the attention that not all states are of congruency are desirable.
Right.
And for me, that was a big, like, oh my gosh, you know, like a big light bulb moment.
Yes.
And so I don't know, maybe we should talk about this a little bit. I think it's really, it's going to be useful. And there's a list as well in the book, 77 to 79 with the different states, but I'm jumping the gun here. So maybe you want to say something about that as well.
Go ahead and jump that gun, my friend.
So basically, now I've lost the page, which is great. Chapter 5, sorry, where am I? 1.8. Yeah, that's it. So basically, your client might be really congruent, you know, in being angry, vengeful, uncaring, or even depressed. And what it says here, these could be congruent states resulting from a sympathetic parasympathetic imbalance. And obviously, I'm sure these states will have a positive intention at the given moment for your clients. And this is something obviously that you'd want to explore. But then it's also really good to know where the balanced states are, which are on page 77, 79 of the book. And I just thought it was really useful to be aware of the different states, the one where you are in sympathetic, the balanced state, and sympathetic. I hope it makes sense what I'm saying. Yeah, and Shelly, if you want to add anything to that.
I actually don't. There's you've said it beautifully, Emilie. There's nothing really that I can add to that. The point, I suppose, is just exactly that. Like, obviously, when clients come to us, they want to get into a resourceful state. And sometimes they are really good at being in an unresourceful state. And they can kind of get they can get their balance and their congruence from being in a place that's not really useful to them or useful to, you know, their family or, you know, the world at large. So keeping an eye out for stuff like that, I suppose, for not only balance within their system, but balance within all of the systems that they're a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to?
Remember too that the next step you're going to go up to is highest expression.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were in congruence but unresourceful, you wouldn't go up to highest expression. So you still wouldn't go right up the roadmap.
Right. So bearing in mind that this is the step of the roadmap that personally with my coaching, I like to spend the most time making sure that congruence is there and checking and double checking and just making absolutely sure that everything is working together, that, you know, the client's head, heart and gut and their ANS and their pelvic brain, if we're going there, are all working together and are all aiming for the same end result. And that end result is going to be ecological with their life. And of course, if any one of those things are not in place, we're not going to get highest expressions expressing themselves highly. What a great sentence.
Well
we were
said,
on the
Shelly.
page.
Does anybody have any questions or about in regards to this, what we just said?
I guess what arises for me is the words resourceful and unresourceful.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone were aligned but unresourcefully, it's kind of not truly aligned in the bigger spirit of it. And you'd feel that. They'd know it. They'd know it for themselves, and you'd feel it as the coach as to whether or not that was taking them towards what they wanted or whether it was keeping them stuck where they don't want to be. So another filter on that, which is what you brought up so beautifully, Emilie, back to the competencies, the tables on page 77 to 79, is you're also looking for that as another form of calibration, is what competency are they displaying? Are they in that beautiful balanced state, the middle column, or are they in a parasympathetic state, or are they in a sympathetic state? So this is where we're often juggling multiple balls as an mBIT coach.
And knowing that we have that table is amazing, I find, to just, you know, have a glance over it is really helpful. Yeah.
The other thing I'll throw in, which happens occasionally, is one of the questions you asked is, how do you know if someone's not congruent? And if if one or two of the brains is not talking clearly to the other, or one's blocking them, what you'll sometimes get is them describe metaphorically that block. It's like there's a wall here. And so using that metaphor and then breaking the metaphor down to be able to, so how could you get over that wall? How could you build a door to go through the wall? How could you knock out some of the bricks? I found to be really powerful, because the way they're blocking or restricting that communication and finding out how they're doing that is the quickest way through it. If you try and create a metaphor that suits you, it's not going to be nearly as powerful. But if they give you that, that would be my way in, is just using the metaphor they've already given you. So I think I mentioned, it was on a call recently, and I don't know if it was on the last wisdom call. I had a guy who just couldn't go into gut. And
Yeah, you
actually
did.
his block
beautiful
was in
example.
A&S, and he ended up talking about Indiana Jones and the mind train, and he had a mind train running through his body that allowed him to go down into the gut. Well, never in a million years would I have used that as my metaphor, but he offered it on a plate, and so I just used that, and the rail tracks, and the fact the tracks were already in place even if you hadn't gone down them for a while, and you know, all the beautiful ways you can use that as a metaphor. So I'd be listening out for any of that they give you that indicates where they might be stucking themselves or not communicating.
Right. And there's another beautiful example in the book. I don't have a page reference written for it, but of a guy who was asked to access colors, couldn't access colors, but instead was able to access emeralds and diamonds and rubies instead, which come along with their own colors. So I guess as coaches, just having the flexibility and the comfort in being silent for a little bit and being able to kind of sit back and let the client do their thing and give us what we need and what they need in order for us to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if I could share a very brief experience of a coaching session.
Yeah, go, Liz.
Monday. And I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't for on my training with Suzanne. My guy that I was practicing with, he brought something up, and here I was in training, and he brought up, I don't know if you remember, Suzanne, he brought up a sword. As somebody just starting, but his sword was linked to his faith. So what Suzanne did, she came into that process, and you know, as somebody in training, I was like, oh my Lord, if I go with the sword, we're going to cut his head off, we're going to cut into his heart. I thought, ooh. And Suzanne came in and got more about the meaning of the sword, and it became his faith, and the process went round another corner. And on Monday, somebody came to me for coaching who had a deadline to make a decision about a purchase of an apartment. And so we were in our process, lots was coming up. And it was about 2 hours that we were together, and she was struggling to get coherent, and there were nicks in the head and all sorts of things there that are often there. And I remembered she had a deep faith. She's a Christian, and she had a deep faith. And so that just came in. And I said, what do you do when you're making a big decision with God alongside you? And I wanted to be sure that God, her interpretation of God was that he was inside her, he or she, because it was her doing this. It was her internal process, not capturing this from an external, if you like. And so she said, what I do is I just be present with him present, and then I wait. And so that gave me an amazing resource when we then, because I couldn't get her aligned, and then I could take that around the process in the way Suzanne did in the training with this guy with the sword. And then as we did that, you could just see calibration wise, I mean, every part of her just started to shift and move, but not fully until she walked out the door. This head was so powerful that the head wasn't fully on board, but she'd got, you know, the question, what do you need to let go of? And the gut and the heart were connected and clear. But in her head, it wasn't quite there, but she'd had some good, wonderful processes. And as she walked out the door, she went, I really think I know what my decision is now. And so that was just using somebody's connection to themselves through faith.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, if someone has any faith structure, whether it's, you know, Christian, Muslim, whatever it is, it's part of who they are. And so if you align everything else, but that's not aligned, you've still left yourself potentially with a nick.
Yeah.
So I always bring that in. And I'll always bring it in relatively ambiguously, because I don't always know what their faith model is.
Yeah.
Once I know what their faith model is, I'll get their word for whatever their deity is. Is it God? Is it Allah? Is it universe? Is it energy? And then there's a beautiful question that at any point you want to bring that in, I just ask, and this comes from refocusing counseling, where is, whatever their name for the deity is, so where is God for you right now in this situation? And you let them place them, and it might be inside, it might be outside, it might be in front, behind, sideways, it can be anywhere, right? as long as they, and of course we know our heads, in order to answer that question, has to access it. So by default, they're connecting with their deity in order to answer the question. Once they're connected, I just add that in as a brain, just like I do head, heart, and gut. So if you're curious, my process around that, that's literally all I do. But the reason I do it is my belief that if you have a faith structure of any form, of any significance, if you don't align that with head, heart, and gut, you've still left them incongruent rather than congruent. So yeah, if you're comfortable going there, I would say go in, ask the question, use their model of the world. And sometimes I've coached people of different religious groups where I know nothing about their faith structure. So I just have to ask a couple of questions up front just to get the right language for them. What do I call your God? What is the right name? Once you've got the basics, it just adapts across. It comes out of a model called refocusing counseling, which is a Christian model.
I'm curious, just hearing that, is there anything else or anyone else that needs to be included in congruence, in gaining congruence? We talk about all of the brains and also about God or spirituality or whatever, but what else is there that needs to be taken into consideration so that we can get our client an outcome that is ecological?
Nice. And if it's anybody else, it's a heart-based question.
Right.
Because relational affect is always at heart.
Right.
But if it was something else,
yes,
that could be anywhere. So yeah, asking a nice ambiguous question before you move on to highest expression. Is there anything else possible that would take you out of alignment? Great, let's bring it into the conversation.
Yeah. Yep. Anyone or anything or
anyone or anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Set yourself up for success. I don't know if you remember on the training, we do congruence at the end of day 3 and then do highest expression at the start of day 4. And sometimes when the students come back in on day 4, they're out of congruence again. So you got them in congruence, then they go home because you haven't finished the process. Sometimes they'll slip out of congruence because you haven't quite finished it all.
Yeah, and that can happen within a coaching session as well. Even if it's only a 1-hour coaching session, you might be focusing on listening to the heart and getting the heart and the gut all connected and aligned with each other. But in the process of that, their head's off doing something else and having different ideas that don't suit what else is going on in the rest of the body. So I like to, when I'm coaching, I like to just double check until the client, and almost until the client is sick of me asking.
I laugh because I actually know a coach. She is an mBIT coach. She doesn't use it as her main, but she works within chronic pain. And she takes so long getting to that setup that they're pretty much jumping off the settee going, just get rid of it for me now.
Yeah, it's a good technique, just to annoy your client into getting their process right. It helps when you're annoying like I am. I can be pretty annoying. Emilie, is there anything else you wanted to add?
There is well, it's kind of what we were talking about. So when the client is in flow and then suddenly somebody, for instance, has a coaching session with you and they want to start dieting because they want to lose weight, And then so you feel like they're really congruent in their coaching session, and then they go away and they see the piece of cake and they go, oh well, you know, I'm gonna have that piece of cake. So then obviously then they'll be incongruent to losing to wanting to lose weight. And I don't have the facilitator's guide with me. I left it in Stockholm, so I can't read. There's a really amazing paragraph that explains it at the end of chapter 8. I wish I had it in front of me. And it talks about 2 different states. And thanks, Suzanne, for being there. So helpful. It talks about 2 different states. This is great co-creativity right here.
Agile in process. If only I could count the numbers right and get chapter 8. That's because that's chapter 9, and I thought it didn't fit. Apologies.
105 is chapter 8.
Yeah. So where is it, Emily?
It's the example with the person who wants to diet, and they kind of jump from one state to the other. Obviously, in the coaching session, they're congruent. They're really keen to start the diet, and then outside of the coaching session, they find themselves tempted to have the piece of chocolate cake, and they go for it.
I mean, part of me's going, I don't know why I'm bothering reading in this book, so I could give you a personal example of that, but I won't.
Did you find it? It's the bottom 107.
Oh, there you go. You could just read it out. Rochelle, read it out. If you found it.
Okay, so when they are in a state of wanting to diet and lose weight, they can be fully congruent and aligned on this outcome. But at some later time, when they are really hungry and faced with a slice of delicious chocolate cake, they change their minds and can become congruent about wanting to eat the cake. The diet is the last thing on their mind. So they are sequentially incongruent through time. In some ways, this form of incongruence reflects the nature of neural network state dependency. In one state, the brains have access to particular thoughts, feelings, skills, and activations. In another state, the brains operate a completely different set of activation strategies and memories.
Thank you very much.
There's such a lot you could unpack. I'm sitting there going, oh my God, he was a frigging genius.
Right.
If you just break down some of those sentences, not least of which the ambiguity in the language. So at some time later, when they were really hungry and faced with a slice of delicious chocolate cake, they changed their mind.
Which mind?
From which brain did they go from and to?
Mm-hmm. And what were they actually hungry for?
Oh.
That's what I was thinking. Was it one brain doing the work of another, you know?
Right.
Empty heart, fill the gut instead. Yeah, we know.
Yeah. And then he goes on to all the master coach stuff without mentioning anything about master coach, but just dropping in as if it's a throwaway comment that the brains have different beliefs, thoughts, feelings, language, even in different states.
And that was very useful to read. So I just thought I would bring that up too, because it's, yeah, you might end up in that situation with a client.
I think it goes back to what Dima said very early on about secondary gain. Is getting really clear. That question Shelly asked in terms of what you're really hungry for is absolutely key, because often when you eat, it's not for the food at all. It's for soothing.
So
it's for
what would
comfort,
you?
It's for, you know.
What would you do in that situation, Suzanne? So you'd worked with a client, you'd done everything for the weight loss, you know, they then come back and then you say to them, oh, so it was the other brain. Oh, you had different thoughts and beliefs. Like, how do you?
The sarcastic me goes, I'd tell them to stop it. It's about beliefs. It's about underlying beliefs and secondary gain, and them being really aware of what it is that they're using food for, and finding an alternative way that is even more compelling and of value to get whatever their outcome is. So a common one is comfort. If the chocolate cake is really about comfort and not food at all, how else could you get comfort that is even more effective than eating the cake in the moment? And it's got to be believable, and it's got to give them the same dopamine hit and all of those things, or else they'll do it once and they'll go, well, that doesn't work, I'll have the chocolate cake, thanks.
Grant would probably say that that was a very profound question, Suzanne.
Which one?
No, the one that you just asked with the comfort, because it's true. If that is true, obviously, for the client. Because when it comes to dieting, etc., I mean, it could be that it's also at identity level, and that is big. So yeah.
It's also 6 times more powerful to take something away than to give. So if you're restricting someone, the resistance to that is really, really powerful. So that's why the energetics process talks about no restrictions, free choice. But it's free choice with consequences. So you're making a conscious choice about what you have.
And that again is really resourceful for the ANS, because it likes choices.
It loves choice. Choice is safety.
Yeah.
So if you take choice away completely, you will impact on state. And if you take them out of balance, then their beliefs, thoughts, feelings, etc. all change just because they've changed state. So we're a complex system. You can't take any one component out and just work with that one component. By changing any one of the components, you're going to change all the others.
And by taking something away, we've got to replace it with something
even more powerful.
More powerful. Okay,
more effective. Because otherwise, why would I replace it? Why would I let you take away my Rolls Royce and give me a Skoda? Sorry if I just offended anybody then by a poor example.
And the client will tell you what is resourceful for them. They know. Yeah.
And their gut knows. So the ultimate would be in that moment to stop, pause, breathe, come into coherence, place your hand on your gut and ask your gut what it deeply needs. Right now, what is it really hungry for? And then feeding it what it needs.
What if it says the chocolate cake?
Then I would check whether that's coming from gut or head or heart even. So they're where your language prompts need to be really clean. Because if you ask, what do you want? That's a heart question. What I want is the chocolate cake.
Yeah.
What does your gut need? Is a very different question, and will take your attention to your gut. If I got something that I was then still not sure, and because I'm a master coach, I might go out to ANS and ask ANS. Because remember, ANS controls everything. It is the ground on which the roadmap is written.
The borders need to open now.
We want master coach. I know.
I believe there has to be an alternative.
An alternative to chocolate cake, or
yes. You can't take away the master and not replace it with something more compelling.
Sometimes it's just out of our control, and we just have to stay calm and state manage until it will happen.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a huge piece of information I just threw in. I'll back off and go quiet, but if you've got any questions from anything that I just threw in, feel free to throw them my way. We just kind of blasted the whole thing wide open, way beyond congruence with all that.
That's
yeah,
exciting.
this is mBraining for you though. It's touches so many aspects. I think we did the rounds, Shelley. What do you reckon? I think we touched on quite a bit.
I think so.
Awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you. Suzanne, is there anything that we've missed?
No. The only thing I sometimes do, because I'm me, is the only other thing I might do sometimes in congruence is I might go provocative.
You? Really?
Shocking, I know.
Who would have thought?
If someone's really stuck and you've tried negotiating and you've tried looking for secondary gain and you've tried communicating and you've tried metaphor and they're still hung on to some whatever it is, I might do the hey, completely up to you. You can hold this till you're 80 when you're rocking in your chair by your fire. You can still be holding this if you want. Wonder what you'll have missed in life.
Ouch.
So you've got to be in good rapport, right? You've got to know your client well enough and you've got to be in good rapport. But I might go provocative as a way of trying to shift them, shock them, move them. Especially, and this is back to Master Coach, especially if they're stuck in that dorsal vagal. The only way of getting someone out of dorsal vagal is a little bit of sympathetic stimulation. So sometimes I'll try to spur that in themselves because they'll go, oh, fuck, I'm not going to stay here. Great, come on, bring it on. What are we going to change then? And then you can kind of start again. So provocative would be the other thing I'd add in. If you're in good enough rapport and you're confident to hold the space that might emerge in response. But the other thing I'd be curious about is, because we got a bit of time before we need to go, is who's had a client where they've maybe found it more challenging to get into congruence, and what did you notice? Where was any lack of congruence happening? Was it between head and heart and gut, whatever? And what question have you got about that? Maybe throw that open to everyone and say, what would you have done? Because there's some beautiful, knowledge base here where you could offer just a different viewpoint. Everyone that does mBIT does it a slightly different way, and that's the beauty of it. Sometimes having the privilege of watching other people, you go, oh, I like the way you did that. I'll put that in my toolbox. That might be useful later. So you could get some real gems here if you've got a client you want to share where it just hasn't, when they go well, it's great and everybody's happy, but actually we learn often better where it doesn't go smoothly. Crystal.
I had a client that had that's a Christian, and she's got very high she feels that if somebody is homosexual, then his life can't be. He can't be happy. He can't be functioning 100%, and there's lack in his life. And her son was that, and to get that person, I'm not going to change her belief in how she believes about that, but she couldn't see that her son can be happy because she's worried about him all the time, without him changing what he is. So for me, that was, I really took it back to, at some stage, she said that she saw the way that God looked at him with all the compassion and love that he feels for him. And then she added, because of what he's missing out in life. So that for me was a bit of a tricky thing to get past.
So what was her desired outcome?
She was getting panic attacks and anxiety because of he tried to commit suicide, and and then she was she was waking up with a anxiety because of her worry of him.
So what was her desired outcome?
She wanted to be able to get rid of the anxiety.
Okay.
And to let go. Yeah.
Okay. So her getting rid of the anxiety and letting go is totally and utterly unrelated to her son. Or
yes.
Controversial.
Yeah.
So I'd have worked with that.
Yes, I did, and she gave me feedback that the anxiety stopped, and because you're not going to get her to change her belief in how she sees what's happening with him, but I got her to a stage where she accepted what's happening within herself because of what she's believing.
So sounds like you did a great job. What's the question?
No, it was just, sorry. It was just difficult for me to get to a place where I could get her to start realizing that this is not about her son. And she was in her head just thinking about all of this and not really connecting to where she wanted to be.
Awesome. And you clearly did. So what did you do well that got her realizing that her anxiety was in her own head?
I was at some stage, I said to her, aren't you just getting so tired of holding on to this belief?
Beautiful. You went provocative. Love it. How long can you hold that for? It must be exhausting.
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful. And that was you reckon that was the pivot? That was the shift?
I think, yeah, it really brought a shift, yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, and again, you can only say that sort of thing when you're in beautiful rapport, when you're absolutely holding safe space, when you have a good enough relationship with your client that you know you can push the boundaries and poke a bit. Yeah, beautiful. Anyone else got any clients that they want to raise or talk about?
I'm going with your just stop it.
Stop it.
That's going to be me now. Just stop.
Have you seen the video that comes from?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I said that and you're not aware of it, it's a comedy sketch. Bob Newhart. Yeah, Bob Newhart. And if you put a Google search in for "stop it" and Newhart, there's a little skit about a lady with claustrophobia. There's a very funny story behind that, in as much as I used to work in a very stuffy academic office, and we were in a shared space, and someone sent me that clip when the office was full of people doing very stuffy academic things. And I literally laughed out loud. And I had to try and explain why I was laughing at the screen, like I was killing myself. It's a very good sketch, and I've seen it so many times, and it still makes me laugh every time I hear it. And I do use it. I do use it. It's become a bit of a family mantra, if nothing else.
So you can stop it.
Yep, stop it.
That was good.
It's a great pattern interrupt.
Suzanne, my granddaughter's just learning language, and she's just sitting here going, "Stop it! Stop
it!" Very clever.
She's going,
oh my God, she's gorgeous.
I would apologise, but I think it's genius.
She's never said that before. She's going, "Stop it! Stop it!"
See, she's got it all sorted.
Skills for life. See, skills for life. Beautiful. No one else had any tricky clients or? Or you, oh, hello, Wendy. Or yourselves. Like, have you come across something where you have found that you're incongruent and even though you can feel it, you could even probably say where you're incongruent, which brains are not talking to each other, you haven't managed to get yourself kind of past it. Or are you all saints?
Can I just ask, so perhaps an example for myself recently? Yeah. I was really, really angry about something and I wasn't ready to let it go. I wanted to sit in that shit for a while because I just felt really, you know, like I deserve to be angry about this because I was treated poorly and that is just not on. So I was sitting in that and my brain, like I knew, my head brain, that I could have rationalized why I should forgive her and her actions and why she did what she did. And, you know, as a coach particularly, I think you understand that people act with good intentions for themselves and all the rest. But I just did not want to let go of that anger. And I guess my question is, or what I was wondering about is, I mean, I feel like it's okay for us to do that, to hang on to that for a while, to process it for as long as we need to until we're ready to move on. And so if you have a client, I guess, who I was being coached, peer coaching, and I said to her, I want to talk about it, but I don't want to let go of it. And I refused to let go of it. So I just thought, yeah, that'd be a really difficult situation.
But realistic, right? You're going to get clients who that's not an unrealistic scenario. They feel they've been wronged or hurt or whatever. And yeah, they might not be ready to let it go. So it's a great example. And I've been there. I spent months having to try to get myself to the point where I could forgive somebody. And it is a choice. And it's good to know it's a choice. So if that was your client, anyone else jumping in, what would you be curious about?
I'd be curious about what my client is gaining by holding on to this.
Mm-hmm.
How is it making them feel? And what is that feeling giving them? And what would it take for them to be able to let go of it? Because as you said, Roxy, there's value in being able to sit in your shit and acknowledge what's happened, right? But there's also a fine line between acknowledging what's happened and wallowing in it.
Swimming around in the shit.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like, are you sitting in it and acknowledging it and, you know, splashing it on you a little bit, or are you swimming in it and not going to get out? And is it going to turn into quicksand and you won't be able to get out of it easily after that? Whereabouts in that sitting in your shit process are you, and how much further into it do you want to go?
That really resonates with me as well. Sorry, Roxy, I'm interrupting you.
Okay, I would actually be tempted to explore how do they feel coaching could help them right now, because embraining is all about how are they stucking from moving forwards. So if they're sitting in their crap, then let them stay there. When they're ready to move forwards, happy to help. But until they're at that stage, let them wallow for a short amount of period.
Yeah. I love all of those things, and some of them resonate with me more than others in terms of me individually. There was one that really resonated with me, which was, and I can't remember how you phrased it now, but you know, what are they getting? So for me, what have I not yet got that when I get it, I can let go of it really easily and move out of this shit? And I'm curious, this again is going to be my bias, right? But if someone is in the shit, they're in the gut brain. So although we're talking anger, we've gone way deeper than anger. And we know that any emotion that goes really deep goes to gut, not. So as soon as you've got I am, you've got identity attached to it. So you're in the shit, you're I am angry. What does the gut need that it hasn't yet had? What else sits in the gut? Voice. has it not yet been heard? Has it not told its story? Has it not been listened to? Would be something I might explore through my bias.
And I think that's exactly where I was at, Suzanne, is I just wanted someone to listen.
So often it is a simple thing. So coming from a non-judgmental point of view, whether it's on yourself or with a client, your gut is giving you some beautiful information right now. All we need to do is be able to understand what that communication is. What are we not yet hearing? Because your gut's holding on for a purpose. It's still got something it wants to let you know. Once that communication is free flowing, it will let go. It doesn't want you to sit in shit. Your gut's ultimate purpose is to protect you, look after you, keep you safe. So that would, yeah. Awesome.
And you're right. Sometimes it's just a matter of sitting there and listening. Like, I can't tell you how often I've finished a coaching session with someone and thought to myself, I did nothing. I barely said anything. They just talked, and all of a sudden they left feeling a million times better.
Good, eh?
Sometimes that's all it takes, just to sit there and you know, be a witness.
Yeah. And I think there is, you know, there's rage and having a witness, and then there's forgiveness. And forgiveness is a whole heap of other things that need to happen that I think, interesting language, I think forgiveness is integrated. And I think forgiveness is only true forgiveness when it's from head, heart, gut, and ANS. And so it might be that your head knows the logic that it's good to forgive. You can justify the story. They were in a bad place. This was going on, whatever. Your heart wants to forgive because it feels so hurt and so uncomfortable and whatever. But you're in the shit. There's something identity level that's stopping you forgiving. And we know a change is not integrated until it's integrated at gut level. So what would your gut need in order to be able to forgive? And forgive is for self, right? It's never for the other person. So you're then looking at self-forgiveness, which is probably a very different frame from what the client was sat there with if they've come with hurt and anger and rage and all of that.
Yeah, there's a real level of acceptance.
Spot on, Suzanne.
Not that I've been there recently, Roxy, understand?
No, this is purely objective, Suzanne.
Purely objective and theoretical, obviously.
Yeah, it's interesting. I come from, and this has spiked my curiosity with coaching just from day one, the physical manifestation of emotions when you suppress them and trap them. And the way I manifest, well, my body talks to me is through my skin, which is, and Suzanne knows all about that. And I didn't know that I was suppressing so much anger and frustration, etc. And I had to just sit there and literally watch myself become so physically irritated and accept the fact it's okay for me to feel like this right now. It's okay, and to self-soothe and go, it's fine, you know. And then eventually it was like a volcano, you know, the anger just slowly came out, or violently. Sometimes it was, but I had to really match my words because I guess I'm very softly spoken at times, and I used to say, oh, I'm really, oh, you know, today I'm really angry, and I didn't match the anger, so I had to train and coach myself in a way to really express that anger so that it could come out. And again, I wasn't being congruent, so that is one example. So yeah.
Beautiful. And I'm going to pass a book recommendation. Rochelle, thank you very much. I'm in the middle of reading Pussy. And in the middle, she talks about having, what does she call them? Swaggers, is it swaggers parties? Whereby she and her mates have time together to live fully whatever it is they're feeling.
Oh, it's so powerful.
So she dresses up in a bin bag. She puts coal on her face. She'll roll around the floor, thumping her hands in the floor and saying all the right words that make. Once that's all congruent, it releases the emotion from her body. And so often, the book's called Pussy. It's an excellent book, I have to say. I'm only about halfway through, well, 2/3 of the way through. It's a very, very good book, recommended by Rochelle. Thank you. Very fitting with Master Coach, all about that pelvic brain in females. But it resonates on so many other levels as well, that so often as kids, we're taught it's not okay to show emotion. It's not okay to be angry. It's not okay. And we stuff all of the emotions in. And then you're right, something happens and we're sitting there going, yeah, this is my really angry voice and face. But inside we're seething. And our cells are doing anger and rage. And outside we're doing moderated self-management, because that's what a proper girl does.
Exactly.
And we're not congruent in our bodies. And so not a wonder our bodies start showing up in symptoms, be it skin, be it heart, be it whatever. Yeah, so Marvin used to say his belief was that all health problems come from incongruence in the body.
I completely agree with that, coming from personal experience.
Yep. So getting
and
that
taking full
congruent,
sorry.
Well, just getting that congruent stage is so key on so many levels, way beyond sorting out whatever issue it is that your coach, your client has brought in that day. That could be a life changer for them. That is that, you know, that beautiful liberating the human spirit stuff that we talk about as to what is mBIT coaching about.
Yeah.
Ooh, now you've all gone quiet again.
And it brings to me the topic that we kind of discussed with our group recently, the topic about boundaries. So
what is that?
Oh no, it's just, again, very theoretical. Very just one.
I've got a friend.
Yeah, asking for a friend. Nobody knows.
So yeah, being kind of working on myself and also seeing in my relationships with the clients, with my, you know, friends, beloved ones, and so on. So I noticed that a lot of this is actually, you know, the kind of the core reason could be that, you know, when you get doing angering, and you know, it really evolves such a lot of emotions. It's often, you know, deals with the boundaries, how they set up, how they were not respected, and in the first place, if, you know, my friend or someone else, but actually how healthy is my boundaries, and how easily they are being kind of, you know, how you call it, crossed?
Yeah. One of Brené Brown's beautiful, you know, acronyms is BRAVing. The B is boundaries. It's part of the anatomy of trust. If you don't have trust, how can you set up proper communication? If you don't have communication, there's no way you're going to go to congruence. If you're not in congruence, you can't go to highest expression. Trust is as much internally as it is with another person. The piece of paper I've just picked up is, I don't know if you saw it on LinkedIn recently, and I can't remember the name of the author, but it comes from Emotional Agility, is around this. Now, which one's anger? Anger's the red one, if I get that in front of them. So what she's saying is that sometimes we're so not great at emotions that there's an umbrella term we use, but actually it's not even vaguely describing what's underneath.
Yeah.
So she's created these emotional umbrellas. So if a client says angry, you go, talk to me about angry. What sort of angry is angry? And the words under there, she's got frustrated, grumpy, annoyed, defensive, irritated, disgusted, offended, spiteful. Which, you know, we can give a throwaway comment and think we're doing heart and think we're doing feeling. But it can still be a mask. It can still be just a slightly better version than, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Fine. No, I'm not. I'm seething. I'm seething with pus-filled rage right now.
So you're still fine.
But I'm fine. Thank you for asking. So I've now got those umbrellas across on the wall by my client chair as a kind of almost emotional intelligence reminder that if that sort of emotion comes up and I'm not sure, that if there's not congruence between their voice, if they say, yeah, I'm a bit angry, that's not a bit angry. That's the mask of I'm fine. So tell me more about this angry. Can you, I don't want you to go right in the middle of it right now, but just poke a toe in there and tell me what angry feels like. Where is it in your body? Because that'll give you a good indication if it's angry or if it's dropped into identity rage. So I kind of don't really accept first response from clients if they're incongruent with what they're saying. Yeah, I'm really happy. Thanks. Great result. Thanks. Really happy. On a score of 1 out of 10, how happy are you right now? Trust your gut. Trust your gut. If you don't feel it, if you don't feel what they're saying, trust that there might be something else there that they might not even be aware of. They might have spent, 50 years persuading themselves that this is angry. Liz.
They might have been taught in childhood, don't do anger. There's all of that. I learned in the very basic counselling training, the word fine is a red flag immediately. And it stands for things. So obviously the first, anyway, I won't say it, I've got my granddaughter here, but fine stands for something and we go, oh, okay. And it's always a mask for something.
Yeah. And some people use other words, right? They might say, yeah, I'm okay, I'm good, cool. To me, they're all that kind of, I'm not going to really tell you. Or it's not even necessarily I won't tell you, but it's like, I'm not going to go there to feel it.
And sometimes it's not the appropriate moment, but I guess if you're in a coaching session, that's completely different. Because, yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, again, going a little bit provocative, or except it's absolutely true, is that if they are, because it's too painful and it hurts too much, kind of shielding out all of the so-called negative emotions, well, they're also shielding out all the positive ones. So I might go completely opposite. If I think that's what's happening, I might go, when was the last time you felt real joy, had a really good belly laugh? And you might get in kind of through a back door to that fact they've blocked feeling without having to go into the actual block straight off. You can't cut off just the uncomfortable emotions.
Yes, it's very sad. I remember when I had something that I had to work through around forgiveness, that I became kind of also a reclusive. I was separating myself from people around me. So I think that's also something that you can pick up with your clients. How are they still connecting with other people around them? How are they? I think it's a very bad thing, that the part that it connects with your whole life. It influences your whole life. So. Yeah.
And back to
Good
that
thing
comment
to
about being state dependent, right? If you're in sympathetic or dorsal vagal, you're not in connection with other people, because connection with other people is ventral vagal. So again, it's about juggling all those balls. You're not only assessing their language, their gestures, their congruence, you're also assessing their state and trying to come up with a holistic picture of where they're at.
Suzanne, I'm just curious. I worked with a client a couple of weeks ago who I'm working with her again tomorrow, and we ended up just going through a timeline. But she believed it was as a result of her breakup, and she was just disconnected, etc. But when we actually went in, it came back to the death of her father when she was 10. And by the end, I'd sort of integrated some mBIT and all of that. And at the end, she heard a bird on my end, and then she actually said she felt her father touch her. And she said she's been crying and crying, but she said, I'm actually feeling, I've stopped myself from feeling. So the last sort of week or so, I've been checking in with her, and she's like, I'm crying, but I feel so much better. Could that be, because I haven't allowed myself to feel? I said, well, again, I can't say what it could or couldn't be, but your body is doing what it needs to do, to release this. So I'm working with her again tomorrow. So I'm quite curious now to see what direction it will go in, because she said that she'd sort of been so closed off her partner was quite narcissistic, but now she's actually feeling, and she's taken herself to a lovely retreat. So our session tomorrow is going to be while she's on retreat, which is beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, so many potential, what if, and we don't know because we've never spoken to her, but yeah, it might just be release of emotions. It might be that's released some grief, that she's having to grieve something she hasn't had, and that will take time. If it's just pure emotion, if you don't interfere with an emotion, it just passes within 90 seconds. The only reason they hang around is if you start to think it through and put story and meaning to it. So if it's hanging around, it might be something else as well. It might be a grief process, or it might be,
Well, she actually said she felt a lot of guilt because she didn't want to spend time with him as just before he passed, because he was quite ill. But she said she actually felt connected with him for the first time. She's, I think, 40, like in 30 years. So again, I've just said to her, allow yourself to feel and allow yourself to go through, because she's like, I'm really happy with the session, and I am feeling. I said, well, your body needs to do what it needs to do. There's no same way for any human.
No, and especially with grief, I never coach someone to speed grief up.
No, well, that's, I just love this space. It's next level.
That's a whole different program.
Don't even go there. I'm turning off my camera.
Okay, it's nearly 7:30. Any questions? It's lovely to see everybody. We've got waves. We got waves. Any last questions, comments? Now, we haven't got a topic for next time. Any ideas for next topic? Do we want to go highest expression? Do we want to just keep going up the roadmap?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too.
Would anyone like to facilitate that call? I'm just trying to get the date in. It's going to be the 4th of September, I think, because the next one on the 28th is a master coach call. And then, so Friday the 4th of September is the next coach cert level call. Who's on? Who's a trainer on? Liz, Wendy. Either of you fancy facilitating highest expression?
I do. The only reason I'm not saying anything is because I'm always preoccupied at the minute with a little one. So I'm very happy to jump in as often as you want me to with experiences and things. What date is that, Suzanne? What date is that?
It's a Friday. It's a Friday evening, 8 o'clock here. So
and it's
same time as today, but on a Friday night, like a Friday.
What date is that? Sorry?
4th of September.
It will be at 9 o'clock for you in the morning, Liz.
Yeah, I'll do everything to be on the call and be part of it, but I won't on this occasion facilitate.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Wendy, do you fancy it?
Yeah, I'm just not 100% sure that I can join that call date.
All righty.
So
Not a problem. I'll pick it up for the minute. If anyone else fancies it, just private message me and it's all yours. If not, I'll do it. So yeah, Friday the 4th, highest expression. Let's keep moving up the roadmap. If you want to read through the bits in the book or the workbook before then, that might stimulate some interesting discussion. And just keep your awareness with your clients at that highest expression level so that you might come with specific questions around that part of the roadmap. Fantastic. Well, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe. Yeah, if you're in a COVID active area, be safe, and look forward to seeing you all on the 4th, unless I see you in the Master Coach one before that.
Thank you.
And
thank you, guys.
to Shelly and Emilie.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant session, you two. Brilliant session. Thank you.
Thank you.